Hey there, and welcome to exercise 3 from the 110 Pro Tools ebook. Exercise 3 and 4 are all about MIDI. And exercise 3 in particular, we're going to tweak a little bit based on the hardware limitations, but if you follow along, you will be able to do it. So as we go through exercise 3, just follow what I'm doing in this video, because I'm going to modify some of the instructions, but if you follow my instructions, you'll be able to complete the assignment. Okay, so here we go. MIDI recording. So the first thing we want to do is to open up a session that has already been started for us. It's called Waiting Here, and it's in the 110 exercise MIDI folder, which I just happen to have open. There it is right there. Waiting Here. And this is a PTXT file, which is a Pro Tools template session file. Okay, while it's starting up, let's see what we got to do. We want to make sure our I/O settings are on stereo mix, and we want to select prompt for location, and we want to save it to probably to the same session folder and just name it like with our initials. Let's see where we are. Okay, here we go. Waiting Here, I'll call it KT. Wave, 24-bit. Sample rate, this is going to be a song, and we'll keep it at 44.1. Stereo mix, like the instructions say. Prompt for location, and we want to make sure everything's interleaved. Create. Okay, so I have this on my personal hard drive. Right there, Pro Tools 110 exercise media in the Waiting Here folder. Boom. Okay, it's restoring the tracks. While it's doing that, let's see. Display and configure the transport window. So we'll go to Window, scroll down to Transport, or hit Command 1 or Control 1 on Windows, with 1 being from the numeric keypad. So, okay, wow, look at all that. There's a lot going on there. Okay, so Window, Transport. Okay, this is what they want us to use. Great. This is where a lot of the MIDI controls are, is in this transport window, specifically these buttons right here. Okay, so choose View Transport. Oh yeah, we did that. And we want to make sure that we see the counters, the MIDI controls, and the expanded transport. And we make sure about that by clicking on the transport window pop-up button, which is in the upper right corner of the transport window. So counters, MIDI controls, expanded transport. Let's see. Okay. So here's our transport window. Here's the button that will let us modify it. So we want counters, MIDI controls, and expanded transport. Great. Those are already checked, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the counters. We're seeing the MIDI controls, which are here, and we're seeing the expanded transport, which is this area right here. We're going to be talking about pre-roll and post-roll, which is a huge part of all editing, not just music, but a lot in cinema editing, as you'll see in this and exercise 4. Okay. So selecting a loop record take, we're going to select a basic pattern on the MIDI drums track from several existing takes. So first we want to zoom in on this clip on the MIDI drums track. And we do that, they've already done this for us. Earlier we learned about making zoom presets. So we can have like a wide, a medium, and a close-up of different areas of our edit window, and we can save those sort of views as zoom presets. So it looks like zoom preset 2 is what we want here. So up here are the zoom preset buttons, which are under the zoom controls here. They say zoom preset 2. Watch what happens it's going to zoom in on this clip on the MIDI drums. Watch, I'll click on 2, and there it is right there. See, watch, if I click on 1, if I click on 3, if I click on 4, it looks like they just have 2 and 3 as a couple of selections. 3 is extremely zoomed in. 2 is just kind of a standard close-up of the clip we want to deal with, so that's good. Okay. So this is where we're going to learn about playlists. Playlists are huge. Playlists are really good for recording multiple takes and then auditioning them. So if you have an actor come in and you want them to say a line over and over again until they get it right, you could do what's called a loop record. So instead of saying take 1 and setting up the record and then stopping and then starting the whole thing again, you could just hit record and it will just make a take based on your designated time for the take. I'll show you what I mean. So it says to click on, let's see, select the MIDI drums 1 clip, and this clip is a placeholder representing an empty take. Yeah, that's okay. Press Command Shift down arrow or Control Shift down arrow to cycle the media in the selection to the next take. We want to cycle to MIDI drums 3. What does all this mean? I'll show you. Sort of show you the behind the scenes here. So we learned about playlists in this chapter. So here we see 1 track, MIDI drums, with 1 clip. Seems fine. But check this out. You see this little blue arrow next to the playlist? It says Playlist Selector. If you click on that, you'll see that there's something that says MIDI drums, and then MIDI drums 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're like, what's that all about? Well, check this out. I have a bunch of these tracks that have been, oh, I'm sorry, I have a bunch of these clips that when these MIDI drums were done, what we did was we selected this portion in time, record enabled it, and then we did what was called a loop record. So if you go up to options down to loop record, see this record button turns into a record button with a little loop symbol. And then what happens is it records this, what is this? A 4-beat 1-bar sample over and over again. So I can go take 1, do, do, do. That wasn't good. Do, do, do. That was okay. Do, do, do. Okay, that was good. And I could take as many takes as I want. It'll just keep looping that recording and making a new clip for each recording until I tell it to stop. Now in the resources, I have at least 1 video that goes into this. It's all about loop recording and playlists. Watch it if you want more details. It's a very powerful feature and it's something that you will use with ADR, I guarantee it. But let's just go back to the directions here. So let's put it back on normal. There we go. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to cycle through this until we find MIDI drums 03. So I'm going to hit Command Shift down arrow, or if you're on a PC, Control Shift down arrow, and you'll see it cycle through. Command Shift. Here we go. See that? MIDI drums 2, MIDI drums 3, MIDI drums 4, MIDI drums 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you look at the clip list, you'll see these are all separate clips. I'm just shuffling between them. That's the cool thing about tracks. A track can basically have, like I said, different playlists or almost like sub-tracks. And then if you're like, I don't know if I like this one, let's try the next one. Maybe not that one. Let's try the next one. So what I can do is, and then when you go back home, it gives you the little house symbol that lets you know that you're back home. So let's try number 2. You're like, I'm going to solo this actually. You're like, I don't know about that. Let's try MIDI drums number 3. I don't know about that. Let's try MIDI drums number 4. Now again, I'm hitting Shift Command down arrow. And another thing I could do is I could just click on this to scroll through the different playlists. I'm just doing a shortcut with the Shift Command down arrow. So I'm on MIDI drums 04. Instead, I could go like here, MIDI drums 05. MIDI drums 06. Ooh, I like that one. I'm going to stick with that one. Oh, I have to increase my buffer size. So I've got a lot going on here. You can see my buffer size is really small. So I'll bring it back up to 512. There we go. Okay. So it says to choose number 3. So I'm going to do that. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. I like my choice better, but I'll stick with what they want. Okay. So audition the loop record takes. So options loop playback to enable loop playback mode, and then press the space bar to begin playback. This is where playing your looped recordings comes into play. Because like I said, when you do looped recording, it records each looped recording underneath the clip that you recorded first. So your first take is what you see, and then the second take goes under it, the third take goes under it, and so on. And then what you can do is make sure you are in loop recording by right-clicking on the play button, or options loop playback. Select the clip that has playlists under it, as you can see here by clicking on this button. And since I'm on loop playback, I can play it back. And as I'm playing it back, I could switch with the shortcut, Shift Command down arrow, to see how I like it. And if I unsolo this and play it with everything else, then I can really see which one's the best. So can you just imagine if you're doing ADR for a scene, you could have a playlist of different takes, just play the scene on loop and just sort of scroll through the different takes until you find the right one. Super powerful feature. We're just doing it with music, but you could do this with, like I said, any audio file. So I'll stick with that one. That one was all right. Now what we're going to do is something that's definitely music-centered only, and that is Midi Merge. Midi Merge is a way, let's see how they describe it. We'll use a Midi keyboard to record additional parts for our drum pattern with Midi Merge enabled. This will allow us to build up our drum pattern in layers. So what this means is, I'll make this a little bigger. This is a MIDI clip. How do we know? We are in ticks for our time-based selector, and it's not a waveform, it's just basically like stretched out dots. That's how we know it's a MIDI clip. With Midi Merge enabled, we can add to this. So maybe this is cool. I'll solo it again. Maybe I'm like, that's a cool MIDI clip, I just wish it had a little more to it. Well, I can record on top of it. This is a clip that will still allow me to modify the clip itself with more MIDI notes. So in other words, I can record into a clip and modify it. So MIDI drums 15, the way it is now, I can add more MIDI notes to it and make it a more complex drum clip. And we do that with Midi Merge. We're merging a new MIDI recording onto an already existing MIDI clip. That is Midi Merge. So, and how do we know we're doing this? In our transport window, there's this button right here, Midi Merge, and this will be a question on the Pro Tools exam. They'll show you this button and say, what is this? This is the Midi Merge button. This is the conductor track. This is the metronome, which is the click track. And this is something called wait for note, which I'm not sure if we go into it too much in the 100 level, but what it is if when you hit record, it won't start recording until you play the first note. Again, something very music centered, but it's wait for note, wait to record, wait for the note to play before you hit record. But what we're doing now is Midi Merge. So verify that the MIDI controller is connected to your system. It is. It's a built-in virtual MIDI keyboard. Verify the clip you chose is still selected. From options, do each of the following. Verify loop playback is enabled, and verify loop record is disabled. And then make sure Midi Merge is on, highlighted in blue, and then click track record enable on the MIDI drums track. So here we go. Options, we definitely want loop record off. It is, as you can see, but we want loop playback on. Great. Now we want to record enable this track. And then what we want to do is go up to window. Now this is where we veer away from the instructions a little bit. The original instructions want us to actually plug in an actual piano, an actual keyboard to your computer. Obviously we can't do that, but the cool thing about the latest version of Pro Tools is that if you go up to window, there is a virtual MIDI keyboard which will allow us to complete this assignment. So this is what I want you to do. Go up to window, MIDI keyboard, open it up. Looks like it's a little piano. It's basically one octave. An octave is like 8 keys basically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We can change our octave. We can make it lower. So lower, 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 or higher, 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 higher. And velocity is a term for how strong we strike the key. So a low velocity is do, 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 and a high velocity is do, 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 do. It's like really hitting the keys hard is a high velocity. Softly hitting the keys is a low velocity. So in this particular example, the keys we are going to hit are the J and the K keys. In this particular example, the other keys will not work. That's because we are using virtual instruments. If you do not have your insert panel open, make sure you go up to View, Edit Window Views. It's going to wait for you to do that. Inserts A to E. As you can see, we have the Expand virtual instrument plugged in. When you click on it, you'll see this is the Expand plugin, and what we have here is something called the, let's see, we have the MIDI drums. It's just basically MIDI drums, and as you can see, it's kicks, snares, hats, toms, cymbals. This is basically a drum set. It's a virtual drum set. So I'm going to close this window. Because it's a drum set, you have 88 keys on the piano, right? In this case, we have 8, but still, we don't have a separate key for every separate drum, which basically means some keys will trigger a drum effect and some keys won't. Some keys, so for example, if I click on this, nothing happens. If I click on this, there we go. I almost forgot about this. We have to, in order for this to work, you want to, these are where, this right here where my mouse is, this is where, as you can see, where it says octave. This is where we lower and raise our octave. I want you to bring your octave down to C0, just middle of the road octave. When you do that, then hit the J and K keys. As you can see, the other keys don't do anything, but J and K do. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take this already existing track, we're going to record enable it, and then record enable it here in the transport window. And then when I hit play, it's going to basically play the track on a loop because it's on loop. It's on loop play, and because I've got Midi Merge on, it's just going to wait for me to add some beats. So watch what happens visually and listen as I add drum beats to this. Now I'm going to do it. And then you hit stop when you're done. And as you can see, there are a lot more little ticks in here because I have merged a new MIDI recording onto an already existing MIDI recording. Now, like I said, this is something very specific to music, and this is something that will be mentioned on the Pro Tools exam. That's why we're going over it. But in the audio post world, you're really not going to be messing with MIDI or Midi Merge because you are not the music creator. You are the sound designer of a movie. Someone else is making the music. However, it is good to know how Midi Merge and how playlists work, which is what we've talked about today, because you will utilize this technology when you're doing things like ADR recordings, Foley recordings, things like that, where you need to have multiple takes. So, once we do that, let's see what else it says. For the second pass, you could do this again and again. So it says, for the second pass, with the selection continuing to play back, rehearse the timing for the hand claps. And that basically just means let it play and hit record, and then, you know, I'll show you what they mean. So what you can do is, actually no, turn on the record enable, hit play, and since I'm not recording yet, I could just play around and see what sounds good, but without committing anything. And then as soon as I like what I'm doing, I just hit the record. I'm already playing. See, I'm already playing. And as soon as I'm ready, I don't have to stop it because I've record enabled the track and I'm loop playing it. And as soon as I'm ready to record yet another layer, yet another MIDI merge, I hit the record button. Now it's just all messy. But as you can see, you can add layer after layer after layer. And now I've got this crazy MIDI clip that's got a buttload of ticks on it. And if you really want to see your work up close and personal, all you have to do is double click on it and it'll open up the MIDI editor window. Double click, boom. So now I've got this window open that I can actually, where I can actually see the work that I've done, and I can actually hover my mouse over it and move some stuff around. See that? I can move the whole thing around. I could deselect and then select individual ones. But again, this is more advanced like music making, which you as audio sound designers won't be doing. But as you can see, you do have the capability to do this. And if you do want to investigate more about this, definitely look at the MIDI resources in this week's module, because there's some great videos in there that dive even deeper into the MIDI editor, loop recording, playlists, the whole thing. We're just sort of scratching the surface here. Okay. And then when you are finished, disable record on the MIDI drums track. Press return to go to the start of the settings. Press the space bar to listen to your recording. If you're satisfied, save and close the session. Take a picture and send it to me. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Save the session. Save it as O2. And then you take a picture. And then send it to me, and you're done with exercise 3.